Hello everyone, welcome to this week's episode of the Sky Sports F1 podcast with me, Matt Baker. And this week I'm joined by a guy who's had a fascinating career in Formula One at Toro Rosso and is now a hugely successful DJ and music producer. Please welcome Jaime Alguersuari. Jaime, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks.
Very good. Where are you joining us from?
I'm in Barcelona. This is my home place and where I was born. And very happy to be living here. You know, it's an excellent city, full of sunshine and good food and nice people.
Yeah. Oh, sounds fantastic. Jaime, there's so much I want to talk to you about. So I'm just going to try and give our listeners a bit of an overview of what we're going to talk about in the discussion. So I want to get into your career, your Formula One career, time with the Red Bull family, and I think there's just some interesting conversations to have around what's happening at AlphaTauri or Toro Rosso, your former team, with Nyck de Vries being replaced by Danny Ricciardo at the moment. So I want to get your thoughts on that. I want to also talk about junior programs in Formula One, your thoughts on if they work or not, and if there's still a place for them in Formula One. And also, we have to talk about your music career as well, because, I was listening to some of your tracks before we start the interview, and I was really, really good, really enjoying them. So, we'll get into those as well. But, Jaime, take us back to the start of your career, and how did the relationship with Red Bull come about? Where were you, and who approached who?
Well, it's an actually interesting. You know what happened was that I was in my last year of karting. I did this contract. It was actually my first contract with this karting manufacturer called Intrepid in Italy. So I was only 14 years old, and I was racing ICA category, international category of karting. It went really well. I won a couple of championships and came vice world champion. And basically, here in my family, we never thought about Formula One or being a racing driver. I was just doing my thing in karting, like many other drivers. You know, if you ask like Alonso and all these guys, they never thought of becoming Formula One drivers. They were just professionals at what they did, and it was karting by then. And this is where we all came from, you know. So, you know, my heroes were all these Alessandro Manetti, Davide Foré, all these guys that they had like long careers and very successful careers in karting. But at some point, you know, I received this phone call from this Danny Sullivan and Helmut Marko. They were doing this Red Bull Junior selection, the driver selection in Portugal, in Estoril, in 2005. And basically, they were doing this 45, 50 driver selection, and they were selecting like 4 or 5 drivers out of 50. And it was like a test of 2 days. And the test was very simple. You had to do like 5 or 6 laps with one car. And then you put new tires without knowing the track and anything. So, you know, they didn't have much time. They had to test every single driver. So there was like very little testing time for every driver. And I guess by the end of the day, they were selecting all these 5 drivers. It was like a kind of a master chef kind of selecting, you know, casting thing. The test went really well. I topped the times before putting new tires. So I put new tires and then I went even quicker. And they, you know, Helmut already like wanted me to sign the contract of the, you know, getting in the junior team. I wasn't really aware of what happened at that time. You know, I was like too young. It was just like I didn't even understand what was going on. And then, I started to drive for them and started my single-seater career, basically.
What were your first impressions of the likes of Helmut Marko and Christian Horner once you got into that Red Bull family? Were they welcoming? What were the first impressions?
I actually didn't know Christian since Formula One, and I actually didn't really have a very extended, long relation with Christian Horner, to be honest. Everything was managed by Helmut. Everything was going through Helmut, and all the phone calls were coming from Helmut. So I had a good relation with Dr. Marko, even though many people don't think about it. He's the policeman of the junior team, but it's his job. I mean, the junior team program is a very strict and very demanding program, but it has to be. You know, they pay for your career. They have been sponsoring, like they sponsored many drivers. Like if you guys study and make a list of how many drivers they sponsor, you would be surprised. It's a huge amount of money they have invested in drivers. And of course, you know, if you have more drivers to sponsor, to test, and to try, you get very good drivers out of them, you know, like champions, like really, really amazing drivers. The way they act and the way they sometimes is not fair, but it's the way it is. Sometimes it's not, like, in my opinion, on how they, what they did for me, with Buemi, is not like really a sporting, let's say, a very generous sporting manner to get rid of two drivers, because it was not decided on results. It was decided on other things like commercial and interesting, you know, things. But that's the way Formula One sometimes work, and you have to accept it. You know, you're part of it. But I had a you know, a good time with them, and I enjoyed every single moment. Even the pressure moments were fine, because if you cannot deal with that pressure, you cannot deal with the moment that you have a winning car and you are about to become world champion, or you have to deliver, you know. So, you know, I agree with the way they work. I just don't agree with how sometimes they apply things to some drivers. But just to get things, you know, to be very, very sure of what we say, is that if you don't deliver results, if you are not in the right performance or where you should be, they have the right to get you out, because, you know, they are asking you for the best. So,
do you think that reflects, I mean, what you just say there kind of does reflect Formula One in general, doesn't it? Ultimately, there's only 20 drivers. There's only, well, I mean, 24 races is quite a few races per season, but you don't get many opportunities in Formula One to prove yourself. I guess it's a good opportunity to talk maybe a little bit about what happened to Nyck de Vries. And he only had 10 races in the AlphaTauri, and we must also remember, this is not the fastest car on the grid. This is one of the slowest cars on the grid.
It is true, but you have to see a line of improvement. If there is no line of improvement, they have the right to get rid of you. You have to show at least. I mean, he had very little races to show his total performance. I'm sure there was much more coming from Nyck, but if there was no line of no growth of performance from the first race to the last race, they have the right to do that. At the end of the day, listen, Formula One is about killing your teammate. You know, he has the same tools than you. And my whole goal when I was in Toro Rosso, and I can, of course, tell you my example, because that's what I live. It was about beating my teammate, making sure I was ending the season with more points on the scoreboard than him. That was the only way I could provide money to my team, you know. So money means delivering results. When you beat your teammate, you have the right to stay. You cannot compare against anyone, you know. They were asking us to win races in Formula One, and we were not able to beat Mercedes at that time with Schumacher and Rosberg, or Lotus or Renault or Force India. They had much more budget than us. They were teams more developed than Toro Rosso. It was only the second year of the car. So, you know, asking for miracles is not possible, but asking to deliver the maximum out of it, it is possible. So if you beat your teammate and you're doing well, and you're putting the car in the points when it's not a car where it's supposed to be in the points, then you're delivering. You're doing a good job. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, when just to compare a couple of, you know, for example, Yuki Tsunoda at the moment, you know, you in your final season before you were let go by Toro Rosso, you got 7 top 10s, which was a good season. And Yuki at the moment, he's got 2 10th place finishes. We're halfway through the Formula One season. So do you maybe perhaps see that Red Bull or the Red Bull program, as it were, has maybe got a bit more lenient on drivers? Do you think that maybe looking back, that was obviously very harsh with what happened with yourself? But where do you see that example with Tsunoda sitting?
For me, right now, and I'm going to be very clear with you, the fact that Checo Perez is driving for the Red Bull Racing team is quite clear that the Red Bull Junior team is not any more successful. Because the whole idea, and that's what they told us, and that's what they told to the media and everyone, is that we're building up champions, or we're building up the best drivers we can, and give them an opportunity to drive for Toro Rosso, nowadays AlphaTauri, in order that they get experience in Formula One, so we can upgrade them to the bigger team, which is Red Bull Racing. The fact that they had to go somewhere else to find a driver to be driving for them at Red Bull Racing is already, a controversia. It doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? So you're spending millions for many, many years, and I'm telling you, a lot of money, huge amount of money for many drivers to become champions at junior categories, to then put them into Formula One, give them a very little chance, crossing the fingers that they get a good car, because otherwise you do nothing in Formula One if you don't have a good car. You're in the back, and you can show nothing but winning your teammates, and then crossing the fingers that you get a chance to drive for a winning car, which is the Red Bull Racing team. Just by the fact that they are going somewhere else to find, and my huge respect to Checo, I've raced with him in Formula 3, in other racing series, so I know him really, really well, and I know the job that he has now is a very difficult job, because Max is a extraordinary driver, probably the best driver in the world right now. He knows the team, the car, and Checo is struggling big time, and I know there's much more to come from him, but we have to be very clear, Checo was never in the junior team, and if he was, considering the how Helmut Marko judges drivers, he would have not lasted a year. He would have given him a second chance in GP2. He would have not given him a second chance in British Formula 3. We know these things, I know nowadays there's a lot of new fans to Formula 1, but they have to understand the history about where the drivers come from and how the Red Bull Junior team works. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, to build on your point there, the fact that Liam Lawson, for example, one of the Red Bull Junior drivers, was overlooked for the seat that Ricciardo has now obviously Ricciardo's got, but Ricciardo's 34. No disrespect to him, he's 34. Liam Lawson is 21.
Yeah.
So you would argue that, if you're not going to put Liam in there, then perhaps your theory that it's not a system that's necessarily working very well is correct, because surely you'd want to put youth to develop them in AlphaTauri and then bring them into the Red Bull team.
That's the thing that it's sometimes surprising, and I'm actually thinking, well, who's taking decisions there? Is it Helmut really? Is it Helmut with Christian? Is it somebody else behind and acting like a board of interest on considering who is the best to put at that time, and playing with that? I've no idea. Listen, when Helmut called me, I was doing the test for the European KZ Championship in Germany. It was 2009. He called me 1 week and a half before the Hungarian Grand Prix of 2009. He said, okay, you will drive next week and you're gonna be our official driver. I was 19 years old. I never tested a Formula One car before. And I was like, okay, how am I going to deal and how am I going to cope with a 2-hour race in a car that I've never driven? So this is going to be like going to the cemetery, already. I have very little tools to defend myself. It's going to be really hard. They had to make sure they were putting, the youngest ever driver in there. So it was very difficult for me. That year I suffered a lot, but they took that decision, and I could cope with that. There was I believe a little grow line, like developing line from results, and I was delivering a little bit better. And then the following year was definitely much better. And obviously 2011 was my best season. But yeah, sometimes they just make things that doesn't make sense, and they take decisions without really a strategy behind. But it's what it is, and it's like that.
Well, 2009 at the Hungaroring, it's kind of funny that we're talking to you at the week of the Hungarian Grand Prix, the week that Daniel Ricciardo comes into AlphaTauri, your former team, halfway through the season. What were the challenges of coming? I mean, obviously, I appreciate you hadn't driven a Formula One car before, as you just said, but what do you think your challenges were coming in mid-season to a team?
I just wanted to finish the race. Yeah, that was the main goal. We already talked about it before. It was not looking for performance, was just trying to be as consistent as possible through the weekend, learning especially the tires, different compounds. It was the first time in my life that I was using different compounds. Before going to Formula One, you only drive one type of tire, and you're only used to drive this tire. So for me, it was all about gaining experience through the weekend and making sure that I was doing all the laps possible and learning of how a Formula One weekend looked like with my team, mechanics, different engineers, so much data. Formula One is so much different to other racing series. Huge difference.
And when you look at the job Daniel's now got to do, obviously he's very experienced, but what would you deem a successful second half of the season for Daniel Ricciardo right now at AlphaTauri?
The thing is that the car doesn't look very quick. So, performance of the car is probably 80% of the final result, unless it rains and, things happen during the race. But looks like AlphaTauri are struggling with aerodynamics. It has always been the main element in Formula One nowadays. The modern Formula One, it's all about finding performance on aero downforce, efficient downforce. And it looks like AlphaTauri are struggling with that. And you can see Yuki's performance, how it was last year and how it is now. It is true that other teams have been developing very well and have, been doing the step forward, and they've moved forward. So it's going to be difficult for Daniel now, because I'm sure the car is going to feel quite, similar to what he has in his head, of course, because it's a Formula One, modern Formula One, where, he has a lot of experience. So we will have to see a closer battle between Yuki and Daniel on what's remaining of the year, I believe. That's what Red Bull expects from Daniel.
Yeah. Were you surprised when he took that job?
No, not really. I mean, I think Red Bull loves Daniel. I think Christian loves Daniel. All in all, Daniel is a nice guy. He's a fun guy. He's a professional driver. He's definitely he knows how to deal with all the things, and he's a very intelligent guy, smart guy, and also he's a quick driver. I don't know what happened in McLaren. I think we've seen the very best of Daniel, when he was in Toro Rosso at the time, he did 2 years in Toro Rosso. I think he did a good job. He didn't beat us, like me and Buemi, on points. But for some reason, he was upgraded to Red Bull Racing. Fine. When he was upgraded to Red Bull Racing, he beat Sebastian, and he came third in the World Championship. So that's some big numbers out there. And he didn't have a winning car. At that time, Mercedes had it. So he's a winning driver, He drove for a winning car, and he did some amazing results. So I think he's definitely a very good driver. We have to see what's happening on his second chance to Formula One. But I think he has a new challenge, and he's well prepared. He's looking forward for this new challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, obviously, that you know Sergio well, that you've raced against him. Do you think that bringing Daniel in has now put more pressure on Sergio in that second Red Bull seat? Do you think ultimately the goal for Daniel is to move from AlphaTauri to the second Red Bull seat to partner Max?
It could happen. I mean, I think Checo has to focus on being closer to Max. Listen, I'm going to say something. It's very simple, and I wouldn't like that anyone feels offended. Checo is a good friend of mine, and I wish him the very best. But you cannot really accept to be half a second off your teammate. Even if it's God coming to the best winning car. I know how it works. It's Formula One. You have a winning car, you have to use it. And I know many people would think like, oh, what are you saying? Like, your best place was a 7th place. Like, where are you coming from? You know, I didn't have a chance to drive a winning car, but I'm just saying, listen, your first rival is your teammate. When you have a winning car, you have to use it. You know, you have to go for it. So it's not acceptable that you're always like half a second, 7/10 slower. If your teammate is winning all the races, race after race, at least you have to be in the podium. You know, it's not like your best day, you're in the podium. No, like you have to be closer to him. Otherwise, they have the right to replace you. You know what I mean? There are many drivers on the grid, many drivers that could be definitely much closer to Max. And we can say, yeah, but Max doesn't want a driver who's close to him because he's the leading driver whatsoever. But I guess every single team wants to make sure they have a balanced pair that can deliver results and at the end of the day can win the World Constructors' Championship, which means more money for the team.
The funny thing with Max, I think, at the moment is that by himself, he could be leading the Constructors' Championship, you know, with the amount of points he's amassed. He doesn't even need a second driver. And that is such is the dominance that we're seeing from Max. So, you know...
Maybe it doesn't happen next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the dominance that Red Bull has now with Max, it might not last forever. You know what I mean? Like you cannot act in a way that thinking, you know, when you were winning all the time, there will be a time where you won't be that dominant. You know, it happened to Ferrari, it happened to Ross Brawn with Brawn GP, it happened to Mercedes. Like it doesn't last forever. And there's one day that things change. Formula One is about to change in 2-3 years' time, right? So, you know, you cannot act like that. You need two very good drivers. That's how I would see it, you know.
Back to your own career and your time with the Red Bull family. I mean, looking back on it now, how do you reflect your time in the junior program and then into your career? Did you enjoy it? Was it a part of your life that you look back fondly?
No, I didn't enjoy it. Definitely, I didn't have the gift to enjoy because I only had one chance. You know, if I was not winning at my first year on Formula 3, I was getting dropped off. I only had one chance. For some reason, I don't know, maybe other drivers had more chances. I didn't have one chance. I wasn't the favorite. Favorite at that time was Brendan Hartley. He was the favorite driver in Red Bull. I was very sure about that. When I won British Formula 3, things changed. Then I was lucky that there was a free seat in Toro Rosso from Sébastien Bourdais. They dropped him mid-season and they called me to replace him in the middle of the season, which was completely crazy. But I coped the best I could. I finished the season. Then 2010 looked a bit better. I was definitely much happier and much prepared for Formula One. And there was a growth, you know, like we started being in the points in my second race of the season in Malaysia. We scored a couple of points then, and then 2011 was very difficult. The first beginning of the season with new Pirelli tires, and then the second half was the best moment of my life. And the biggest mistake was me not signing with Lotus and leaving Red Bull. But what are you gonna expect? Like you're consistently beating your teammate. You're expecting to be upgraded to Red Bull. You know, you're all the time consistently in the top 10, knowing that your car is not able to be in the top 10. So how are you going to expect that they're going to drop you the 18th of December? You know, in the last day of December, I already launched. We did like this event in Madrid for the media and the Spanish press with a new car from 2012. We had James Key as the main engineer, so all the project was done. One day after, they called me and they just dropped me in a 1-minute phone call. And
extraordinary.
Why this has happened like one day after we launched the car? Like why?
Who was that phone call with? How did that phone call go?
It was from Franz Tost. He was just a message, you know, he was just a messenger. This was coming from the very top. And I'm not even saying Helmut Marko. It was just definitely coming from somewhere else because I know Helmut would have not dropped me. If there was someone to drop, there was like someone who lost the battle, from the teammates. Because in Formula One, what we said, you have to beat your teammate. You have to make more points than your teammate. Then in Red Bull, at least you have something to defend yourself. And then they came up with this story saying, yeah, we have dropped them because they are very good drivers, but they're not winning drivers. And I'm like, well, how do you know we're not winning drivers if we've never had a winning car? So everything was so strange and difficult. And I know for real it was not based on results. Like, no chance, we're beating teams that they had like doubled the amount of money. And, I was I did my best with what we had. I'm sleeping like really, really well at home because I know if we had a machine of going back, like we could have not definitely done any better. Like we extract the maximum juice out of the car, out of the team. It was a very good human team and they did really, really well. So I was really, really proud of this 2011 season, honestly.
Do you ever think back and if things had gone differently, if you had been kept on, obviously because that was the last time you raced in Formula One, and then you've obviously gone on to have a successful career in music. But do you ever look back and go, if you had have stayed on for that extra season and it had have been a very good season, and maybe you might still be in Formula One now? Do you ever think like that?
I always thought on why didn't I take that contract that Eric Boulier was offered me in Abu Dhabi. I only had that weekend to sign, so everything was like, why should I sign and go and leave my team, which is not just my team. They were my family for 6 years. Like Helmut believed in me in 2005 in Portugal, and we were together for so long. I was doing well in Formula One, so I thought, why would they drop me? Like, I'm doing good here. Red Bull Racing is a winning car. They were winning the third title with Sebastian, and I thought, well, I want to stay here. I'm doing well. I'm beating my teammate. I'm on my peak moment of my racing career. Why would I leave? It's so risky. So sometimes I do regret why I've signed with them, but it was a difficult call.
Yeah. Just hearing you talk about that, I do get the impression with Red Bull, certainly in those days from your experience, they were pretty brutal, pretty cutthroat with their young drivers. And, would you agree with that? Would you agree that was the kind of atmosphere and culture within Red Bull at that time?
Yeah, they've never done this with anyone else. Like what they did to us, they've never done this to anyone else. And I think they would never do it again. We delivered. That's the thing. We delivered. We delivered points. We delivered the best out of it. They have the right to drop any single driver when they don't deliver. When they are not in the points, when they don't deliver results, even if the car is not good, but you're being beaten consistently by your teammate, they have the right, because they have the reason. They have the right reason. So that's what I'm saying with Nyck. They have a reason. There's no line of improvement. There's no growth between the first race and the 10th race. They have the right to drop you off. That's how Red Bull works. And it's fair. They have been paying for your career since you were a kid, or at least for me. But what I don't understand is when you deliver results, when you're being better than your teammate, when you're beating world champions, when you're beating teams that are bigger than your team, and they have double as budget as your team, and then they drop you off. Just because they say they're not winning drivers. Well, what on earth? Why? Based on what? You know what I mean? Like, give me the chance of driving a winning car, and then you judge us if we are not winning drivers. Sebastian Buemi, he is a good friend of mine. He was my teammate back then. Would not be as clear as me talking like that, because he has a different mindset, but he's a very nice guy, and he thinks the same as I do, But sometimes in Formula One, you have to shut your mouth. You have to be very smart on how to deal with the press, what to say. But listen, I have nothing to lose. I make music now.
Well, it wouldn't be a very good podcast, would it?
No, exactly. I am super happy where I am. I release music as a squire. I love my music. I love people being happy and sharing love and sharing music and dancing to music. I'm in a very different atmosphere right now. I am so grateful that Red Bull gave me the possibility to drive Formula One and, help me out to be in Formula One. Without them, it would have not been possible. But listen, I'm just going to be crystal clear with you guys. So this is what happened. This is the real story. So it's like that.
Yeah. Do you have you seen Helmut Marko since? I mean, have you been in the paddock much since? Yeah. What's it like?
I was in Silverstone last weekend or 2 weekends.
Ah, okay.
No, I went and I saw him. He was not very happy. Like, he tried to avoid me, but I was going through it. I think he was not expecting. I think he didn't know what to expect, really. If I was in a good mood, or I was just gonna give him like so much, and I don't care. I always had a healthy, good relation with him and make jokes. So I was like, "Hey, Dr. Marko, like, do you remember me?" Because it was like 11 or 12 years ago, and he's, "Yeah, of course, I remember the famous Alguersuari, the famous DJ." I'm like, no, not famous yet, but not doing bad. No, it was just a brief talk.
Yeah. Do you still? I mean, do you still enjoy Formula One? Is it something that you're able to watch now and enjoy and actively watch?
I'm a very good friend of Carlos. I support him massively. I've been really, our families, my family and Carlos' family, have been very close together since the Red Bull days. Carlos was in the junior team. They saw everything, or what happened to me and to Buemi. We have very internal, serious talks about everyone's position, and I'm really, really happy he's now where he is. And I think the best of Carlos is yet to come. He's a really, really mature, excellent, super dynamic driver, performing on every single kind of circumstance. And I really wish him the best. He's a really nice kid. He's an excellent driver again. And I hope he has a bright and long future in Formula One.
What do you think's next for Carlos in terms of, is it the car at Ferrari? What needs to happen for him to take that next step? Because I think, we all agree that he's a phenomenal talent, phenomenal driver. What will just take him to the next level?
Honestly, I think Ferrari is a team that is made to win historically. It's like Real Madrid or Barcelona, or even like Paris or Manchester City. Like, there are teams that they have to win. Like, you have to win. You have to go for the Champions League and you have to win it. If you don't get these results, it's a fail. Well, it's not really a fail, but that's what it's supposed to be, because you have this big structure, you have all the facilities, and you have to your disposition all these right people to do it. At the moment, Ferrari is not doing a good job. It's not just the car, it's just the human team. Formula One is not just about having the best car, it's about having the right people. It's a company, it's a football team. A football team is not just about having the best players. You see the Paris team, they have the best players in the world and they didn't do anything on Champions League. So what's the problem? It's the mentality, it's the attitude. How do you form a team with the right attitude to becoming a winning team? Mentality. Red Bull have the best mechanics. They still have the best timing on tire change, pit stops. I think they did 1.82 or something like that. And they if you see the average timing on pit stops, they still are the fastest. Many other teams could beat that, but they don't. So why? Because Red Bull are on a state of flow between the mechanics, they have like this order inside the team that makes it works, makes it being and becoming a winning team. They want to win. They give their very best. And it doesn't seem to happen this in Ferrari. They mess up with strategies, with tire selection. It's all a drama. It looks like a junior team, It looks like you cannot perform like that. So there has to be a change in structure, like internally. It's a human. It's not just having the best aero engineer and designing the best downforce efficient car in the world. It's just about making sure that your team is ordered and has the right mentality to becoming a successful team. If you see the days with Ferrari, with Ross Brawn, they had that. They had this structure. You have to have a structure and an aligned team that, works with the same mentality and for the same goal. And I think that's the lack of performance of Ferrari. They don't have this structure. It's missing.
Well, time will tell if Fred Vasseur is the right man to bring that structure back. Just before we move on to talk about your music career, I'm just intrigued to get your thoughts on Red Bull's domination this season. And obviously, Max Verstappen was the driver who replaced you as the youngest driver to start a Formula One race. You did it at 19 years and 125 days, pretty much 14 years ago to the day at the Hungaroring, as I discussed. Max was 17 years and 166 days. So when you think that he was almost 2 years younger than you were, and I think back to when I was 19, I was pretty young at 19, so I can't imagine how, driving a Formula One car at the age of 17 must just be ridiculous. But how do you reflect on what Max is doing at the moment, how he's dominating, how Red Bull are dominating the sport?
I think Max, if we have to look at his performance and the actual status of Max right now, we have to go back to the karting days and analyze that, because everything is happening for a reason. Max has a special talent already. He was born with a special talent, but talent is not just enough. To become the world best driver in the world, talent is not just enough. Talent has to be worked. Talent has to be trained. You have to work on talent big time. And Max has something that nobody else has. He had a preparation and an education that nobody else had. A tough and strict preparation from karting days. And nobody did that. He was at Genk testing more than anyone else on slick tires, on wet tires, on, track being wet on slick tires and going and running and running and running. His father being so involved in his karting program, tuning up his engines, just going for it with huge, with a very strict mind of performing at the very, very high-end level. Winning was not enough, which if you look at it, it's a very similar education, or it's a very similar mentality of Red Bull, of the junior team. Winning is not enough. What happened was, when I was in Toro Rosso, scoring and beating Michael Schumacher and scoring, 6 points per race, or doing 8th, 9th, 7th, which it was a win for us, it was not enough for them. Everyone was happy around my team, like the press, the Spanish press, other teams were even congratulating our results. But Helmut was not. It was just, okay, this is what you have to do. So that's the mentality that Josh and Max had in mind. And I've raced only once against Max. It was the World Cup in karting in Bahrain, KZ. He won it. I came 9th. It was obviously my return to karting. I just did it for training and so on. So obviously I was not really a professional in that term, but it went really well, because being in the top 10 was for me an achievement at that time. And Max won the race. And I remember it was the time where I met Max. And yeah, he had to do this. There is no margin for becoming second. There's no big happy faces to go back at home. So I think his dad had a huge influence on Max's performance at the moment. So if you have to analyze what Max is doing now, it's becoming from many, many, many years ago. You have to analyze what happened in the karting days when he started. Was huge, strict programs and dedication to what he did. It was a never-ending training program on. It's just here, mental-wise, but also testing, racing, and never stopping of doing that. So, yeah, hands up, it worked. Nobody beats him. He's on a state of flow. He's doing it easy. He's not even pushing. He's not even, of course the car is very quick, but I'm very, very sure if you put Lewis in this car, or Fernando, or whatever driver you want, I don't think they would beat him.
You think?
Yeah.
Wow.
I don't think they would beat him.
Yeah. Be good to try though, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I think if we got 3 Red Bulls and put Max, Lewis, and a Fernando in there, I think that'd be box office. It's fascinating insight, Jaime. Really is about what's happening at Red Bull at the moment. I want to just finish by talking about what you're up to now. And obviously, you mentioned that. So obviously, you left Formula One and then you raced in Formula E for a bit, and then retired at 25. And then, how did the music element to your career come about? Was that always something you wanted to do, or when did that start?
Well, it all started in Ibiza. My parents used to go holidays since the 70s, and obviously they took me there. I met a lot of friends. Ibiza has been always the center of, let's say, summer parties and electronic music in the summer. And all my friends were into DJing, really. It was the vinyl era at that time, and we had to, find the right music in the right stores. It was not as today, like where you find music on the internet everywhere. So it was just a challenge to who had the best record and, what's the best record sounding like, showing us music, sharing music between us. It all started like a game. And then obviously they were mixing and they were playing records and this basement. So I started to do that, and I really found it really good fun. And we started throwing our own parties, like obviously just for us and our friends. And I thought, okay, one day, why shouldn't I start trying to make this like a little beat on my software in the computer? And then maybe when I finish this beat, I add some melodies and I do like very, essential, like really basic stuff. And I started to release my first records in 2009, 2010, like on very independent labels from New York.
This was as you got your chance in Formula One. This all happened at the same time. Yeah, wow.
Dad was worried because he saw that I was like putting a lot of time in my computer and like downloading plugins and buying sound libraries and recording weird stuff. And then he was like, "Well, what are you on about? Like you just became a Formula One driver and you're like really putting all your time on music." But for me, music has always been like a disconnection point of feeling free, Every time I feel sad, I make music or I listen to music. Every time I want to train hard, I listen to music. Every time that I'm motivated about something or passionate about something, I listen to music. So music for me brings me life and connects me to life. So it's a language that it's universal, and even if we don't speak the same language, you understand yourself with music. All these frequencies that are just about to be made and to be composed are there, and it's art is something different, It's different to driving a car, but it's just like freedom of expression. And when it works and people feel it, obviously then being successful in music, it's something completely different. But when you make music and somebody feels it, even if it's one person to 1,000, it's magic, It's like pure state of connection. And this is just incredible. Yeah.
Yeah. It seems slightly trite to ask if there's similarities between music and being a Formula One racing driver. Was there any crossover that you felt? Was there anything that Formula One prepared you to do well in music, or do you see them as completely separate things? This is actually an escape from Formula One, from competitive sport, from all of the pressure that came with that.
Yeah, I think I've learned a lot from my, not just my Formula One career, especially to becoming, to being in Red Bull for many, many years, to have this level of, I would say, like being so strict with yourself, like just trying to push yourself forward and beyond on everything, like training hard every day, like being at your best and always asking for more. This is something that I think is helping me in music, because you're never happy with what you have. You just want to go further, and you put this record where you are happy, but you are always listening to what other people are doing, and you're always analyzing other records, like how did this guy did this sound, or this other what kind of work method do these other producers work? How can I improve my DJ performance? You're always into something new. And so all these inside mentality that you have of developing yourself and becoming a better producer, a better professional in what you do, is what moves you forward. And I think Formula One has helped me massively on that, like always pushing on trying to push yourself forward and going and moving beyond of that course.
Fascinating. I think Formula One seems to have changed quite a lot in the last maybe five years or so. It seems to be moving much more towards entertainment. I don't know if you agree with that. And I'm intrigued to get your thoughts about, for example, in Miami, we had will.i.am making a track just for Formula One specifically. We had the big driver intros. It feels like Formula One, we're going to Vegas this year. There are lots of elements of Formula One that are now becoming more and more entertainment based, even more music based. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's fantastic. I mean, I was in Silverstone 2 weeks ago, and I saw a completely different scenario of what Formula One looks like, or what it looked like back in the past. And I was so happy to see that, like, people from all around the world. It was just, I felt like Formula One has opened finally their eyes, and everything, it looks more easy to understand. It looks much more entertainment. There's much more around Formula One. I think the Netflix film series helped a lot, the TV show, and I think the film that it's about to come out, it's going to be amazing as well. So hands down to that, and to the new era of Formula One. Yeah, it's nice to see that.
And just finally, give us an overview of how your life has changed. So obviously, you were a Formula One racing driver. You were, how many weekends of a year you were driving. Now you're a DJ. What does your week look like? How does it compare to Formula One?
Well, it's very different. I don't see the press very often right now.
Yeah,
but it's fine. I mean, I travel a lot. I'm in a very different circle of people. I make a lot of music every day. I'm on my computer, so I listen a lot of music. It's important for me to bring something different and offer something different to every DJ set. Like, you cannot really base a set that has been working for you in the last, let's say, 2-3 months, and always trying to repeat tracks. That's not challenging for me. And many DJs do that, but it's important to risk. Like, you have to risk on your DJ sets. Like, I find it's super interesting, and sometimes it just doesn't work. But just the fact that you risk and you put something different, extravagant, avant-garde, like something that nobody would try, and when you make it work, it's just amazing, And I think that's how creative DJs, and I think that's what you should look for, And it's challenging because this requires you a huge amount of hours to research for music, dig into music, and get a big knowledge of music from the 70s to the actual moment, I'm running a label called Anims, which I'm really, really happy and proud of it. It started last year. Anims is a Catalan word. It's like cheer up. It means cheer up, it's like a positive word. We had already like 6 references. I'm releasing other artists from all around the world. I've released 2 records of mine. We're doing remixes as well, and just enjoying my life as a DJ, as a producer, a traveler as well, and just having fun with it, which is all about, I think, in life. It's about enjoying your job, feeling connected with what you do, and just trying to deliver your very best.
Yeah, very well said. Where can people find your music? And are you touring at any point? Like, if people want to check you out?
So Spotify is probably the best platform to find music nowadays. You just type my name, Squire, Squire. This is actually my second surname in English. So.
Oh really?
Yeah,
oh really?
Nice. I choose that name. I've started a duo at the moment with a friend called Pole Position. So we play together. And we have
like what you did there.
Yeah,
like what you did there.
We had good gigs already, and we had like excellent dates for the coming summer. So you can find me on Spotify as Squire. Yeah.
Nice one. Well, it's been brilliant to chat to you, Jaime. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Matt.
Really appreciate it. Fascinating insight to what it was like at Red Bull, and glad to see you're doing so well now. We will be back next Tuesday after the Hungarian Grand Prix to look back at that. We'll be joined by Nico Rosberg for that. Hope to see you then. Bye for now.